Okay, real estate pros, this Chris Talks update is for you. And specifically, the subject of today's update is going to be on TRID. And what I'd like to do today is hopefully give you a cause to take a deep breath and even some relief on the upcoming requirements under TRID. So a large portion of our audience are real estate pros. So we're looking at real estate agents and brokers. We're looking at mortgage lenders, mortgage originators, mortgage brokers, and we're looking at settlement agents, you name it. And so I'd like to talk for just a moment and hopefully dispel some rumors or really break apart some bad information that I'm hearing out there about the 3-day rule. So in review, remember, TRID goes into effect on October 3rd, 2015. We know that's been extended, and it's been extended again or revised again, but the last we know, October 3rd, it goes into effect. And so what we largely want to make sure that we understand is that we're getting good information into your hands as a real estate pro and dispelling some of that bad stuff. And so what I'd like to focus on is the 3-day rule. As you recall, the 3-day rule about the closing disclosure before consummation and ultimately settlement of the transaction is that the borrower or the buyer in the transaction for a finance sale should get the closing disclosure 3 days prior to settlement. And so that's really probably a good rule overall, and it should ultimately get the lenders and the settlement agents and all of the parties basically up to speed and getting this information to the transaction stakeholders sooner so that we can abide by the 3-day rule and ultimately close. But I'm hearing lots of bad information out there. I'm getting tons of emails and questions, phone calls. People are coming up to me after seminars, and they're all basically in panic mode about this 3-day rule. So let's give you cause to take a deep breath and explain something. Actually, many things that occurred today as a part of a real estate transaction that would cause the 3-day rule to possibly have to be started over again actually are not true. In other words, let's make this clear. A lot of things that we do now that change transactions at the last minute, you can still do and will not cause a new 3-day disclosure. Let's talk about a couple of examples of where the 3-day period will not start over again. First is any unexpected discoveries on walkthrough. Think about it. In my home state of Louisiana, one of our favorite things to do is to schedule walkthrough like the day before closing. And what typically happens there, of course, is the buyer walks through the property and the buyer is going to inspect and make sure either that the seller repaired the defects or the issues that they said they would, and also just to inspect the property to make sure it's in like or similar condition to when they entered into the purchase agreement, right? So what we've seen a million times is you show up to the walkthrough, oh yeah, the seller forgot to fix X. Or, oh yeah, the seller broke the refrigerator, but we were hoping you wouldn't notice before closing. And the panic out there is, well, how am I going to do what's in the best interest of my client? In other words, if they have a broken refrigerator that was accidentally broken by the movers and everything's supposed to be exactly as it is on the closing disclosure, what do we do? Well, actually, that does not trigger a 3-day period, even if you add seller concessions for the cost of the refrigerator as part of the transaction. No 3-day waiting period start over. That's a big rumor that I'm hearing out there, and hopefully that gives you some cause to relax. Another example are changes to payments which are made at closing. Let's think about things like including the amount of the real estate commission, or the taxes and utilities proration, or even the amount paid into escrow. If those change prior to closing after the 3-day period started, you may not have to start over the new 3-day period. And finally, what about the issue of typos? If there's a typo, we've all been there at the closing table. You pull out the HUD-1 form and you go, oh man, there's a mistake. The name is spelled wrong. Well, guess what? Don't worry. A 3-day period doesn't start over again. You can repair the typos at the table and move on with the transaction. So real quick, what types of things do cause for a new 3-day period? First, if the APR on the loan goes up. Second, if a prepayment penalty is added. And third, if the basic loan product changes, for instance, from a fixed rate to an adjustable rate loan. So unless it's one of those three things, the APR, the prepayment penalty, or the loan product, largely you can rest easy and your closing is not going to be delayed.